if I want to be a mental health worker, such as a psychologist or psychiatrist or counsellor or whatever, then that's all I've got time to study. It's generally not feasible to study other things as well, such as political science and philosophy and economics, sociology. So what we do is we pick one subject and we study it. But the problem with that is that there is no way to get a real grasp on why people become mentally unwell if we don't understand sociology and economics and political science. There's no way to separate mental unwellness from the system that we're living in. We can do so certainly by all means. We can chop it off like that and just focus on the people that's coming in front of us and help them as best as we can. But this is completely foolish if we're not tackling the root of the problem. And in all fairness to us, we don't know that the root of the problem is systemic rather than individualistic. We don't really know that, so there's no reason for us to start worrying about it. When I was a student, I remember some kind of idea or a thing they told us, which was a simple enough kind of idea. It was this idea that there's all these people, we're by the river and we keep seeing people struggling in the river and we have to jump in and save them. And so we keep on doing this and there's all these people. And the idea is that if we wanted to be really smart, we'd go upstream and see who's pushing them in. It's a good story. I thought, yep, fair enough. That makes a lot of sense. But the curious thing about this, and I really don't think any of the teaching staff recognized the extreme irony of this teaching story, is that is exactly what we're doing in mental health all the way. We're trying to pull bodies out of the water and we have no interest, no conception of having an interest in whoever the hell is pushing them in the river. And what's pushing them in the river is the way which we organize ourselves on a collective level. It's how we organize our society, the motivations, the goals, the prohibitions, all the rules that make up our society. It's kind of like a sacred cow, in that no matter what we do, we can't really seriously get away with questioning that. And this can be seen from a number of angles. The most obvious angle is really, if you're doing anything academically, you need to play up to the system, whatever system, the university, the discipline that you're working in, your peers. Because if you don't, one, you won't get any funding. Two, you won't get anyone to listen to you or publish you. So it's not so easy. It's not so easy to look upstream. So we just keep pulling the people in or trying to pull the people in from the river. So we could then ask, okay, what is it about society that has such a bad effect on our mental health? And of course, this is an awfully big subject. It's like shooting at a very broad barn door. You can sheet it anywhere, you're going to hit something. But rather than waste time going into too much details, I think the best way to understand it is in terms of an experiment, that we can say that society is an experiment in progress. Nobody planned it, it just happened, but it is an experiment. So it's an experiment of seeing how we human beings do when we base everything on commerce. Now, commerce is such a big thing. No one will say a bad thing about commerce, about gross GDP and about the economy and all that kind of a stuff and jobs and all of that. No one's going to say anything. Politicians can't say anything about it because they'd be gone in a flash. And for a similar reason, we can't really say anything about it as well, because it's from the top down. We cannot question the idea that everything should be based on commerce, buying and selling. But this isn't intrinsic to the nature of life itself. This is a pure aberration. There's absolutely no way that we should be totally focused on commerce and use that as the ultimate measure of what we want to do and what we don't want to do, what is worthwhile and not worthwhile. In other words, if it makes money, good. If it doesn't, well, let's forget about it. But as I say, it's an experiment. Experiments aren't right and they aren't wrong, but they can yield results. So the experiment here started with two main things: capitalism and the Industrial Revolution, and the various other revolutions that followed on from this, and the huge changes that this involved. And we won't go into all of this. It's not time for it, but we fast forward to the present day, and what we have is a situation where the whole of life is really about selling products. If you're in the sector that sells products, advertising, promoting products if you're in that sector, or buying the products if you're a consumer, regular old consumer. And messages relating to buying and selling and placing products and promoting products are bombarded us all the time. Now, I'm not trying to say we should never buy anything or sell anything, but when it becomes the very fabric of existence itself, that's just downright weird. But it's hard to see just how weird it is because we are super acclimatized to it. So just looking at the basic gist of this setup, the capitalistic type setup, we might think everything is about preparing the product, i.e. producing a good product. That's pretty much what most people would say. Creating a fine product that's adding value to society, to the lives of people. Then the next thing is to promote that product, present it, make everyone aware of it, create a market, all that kind of thing. That's how we'd usually think about it. But of course, the most important thing of all is not to prepare the product, but to prepare those of us who are to buy the products. We have to be prepared too, because quite simply, we ain't going to buy the product unless we're set up in advance to want it or to think we need it. And that takes a lot of work. And it could be said that the work has been going on since wide-scale advertising and promotions took place, whenever that was. Probably 1950s maybe. that kind of comes to mind as the golden age of advertising. Advertising was seen in a totally positive light, and you couldn't hope for a better career than to be in the profession of advertising, because it's helping the economy, it's helping your country, etc., etc. But anyway, the softening up process has been going on for a long time by now, and I think the effects are cumulative. And what is necessary in order to create a good buyer of products is someone who doesn't, and this has been said lots of times before, but it needs to be said again, I guess, is to create a particular type of mental disability so that we are unaware that our psychology is being manipulated, that we are being manipulated. In other words, we have to become super manipulable. Anybody, ideally, if you've got a target population, you want them to be totally manipulable so that you can sell them anything, really. From the point of view of a marketer, a marketeer, a seller of things, that makes perfect sense. You don't even think about it. That's just what you have to do, even if you don't explicitly address the fact that this is what you're doing. This is clearly the way to go. And to cut to the end of the story, here we are, 2023, and the population of those countries which have been most exposed to capitalism, say for example the UK and the USA, just to give two examples, it could be said that we have a population that have been primed. They can be sold anything. However, this has been accomplished and is the result of a long program, a long offensive on the part of the promotion of product promoters. It's now got to the state where every opinion we have, we've been sold. Our political opinions have been sold to us by social media. Everything's been sold to us. And there is still this fantasy that we're operating out of autonomy. And of course, we have to have this fantasy, because otherwise the bare truth would be abhorrent. We couldn't stand by it. The bare truth that humanity, the basic agenda is to rob humanity of the basic dignity of being able to make up their own minds about what sort of life they want to live, or what sort of things they want to do, what sort of things they want to buy or be interested in or believe. It's very undignified to be someone who is who's been completely manipulated and who's open to being manipulated without ever knowing they are, and being indignant in their insistence that they're not being manipulated, but it's their own idea. But if we look around us, we can see this is exactly the situation. This is what has happened. And another way of talking about being manipulable is to say that we have no critical awareness. Schools go on a lot about the importance of instilling critical awareness. Don't just read it, don't just take the information in. Check out if it's bullshit or not. Well, I remember at school they were saying this, and schools always say this, but they don't ever instill critical awareness. That's just simply not true. The educational system hates critical awareness. It wouldn't function if there was too much critical awareness. It would upset the smooth running of the system. So we don't have any critical awareness. We don't have the capacity, because the mechanism by which this works, I think, is that we are taught to distrust ourselves, feel ashamed of our own insight, intuition, our own take on things. Because if we do think for ourselves, we could be making fools of ourselves and everyone would laugh at us. And in terms of the sheer power of engineering society, engineering people, the fear of being mocked and humiliated and laughed at and bullied is the number one mover. That's the most powerful force there is on us. So it's not something that'll kill you. If someone walks up to you and mocks you and derides you and spits at you or just has a laugh at you, it won't kill you, but it'll make you feel very, very bad, and you'll do whatever you need to avoid that. Definitely when we're younger. When we get older, we should have a bit more sense and to worry about what other people think. But when we're younger, it's crucial. It hurts so much. It feels so destructive. So as a result of this process whereby insidiously we're led to disbelieve in ourselves, and the Christian Church has been doing this to us for 2,000 years, simply by saying that what the Christian Church says is if you don't listen to us and you listen to yourself instead, it's probably the devil. And it's not just Christianity says this. If you listen to yourself, how do you know it's not Satan pretending to be your own thoughts? So that's the clever way in which organized religion gaslights us and prevents us from listening to ourselves. And then we have to take it as being the ultimate authority, because we have no longer got that connection with our own insight, our own native intelligence. So what organized religion does, capitalism does too. No one wants a population which thinks for itself. That's a cliche because it's been said loads and loads of times, but it's totally, totally true. So then you end up with this situation where the way we are, the actual way we are, is purely to suit markets. And yet we're taking it for granted that if it suits markets, if it suits the economy, if it helps the system that we're in, it must be good for us. But it only takes a fraction of a second's reflection to realize that doesn't have to be the case at all, and it certainly isn't the case. Because what's good for the system isn't good for you or me or any individual. Simply because what's good for the system is to destroy our individuality as it is, our autonomy, and replace it with a state of heteronomy, a state of being a generic human being who is totally manipulable and manipulated by externally originated information, and who is cut off entirely from their own creativity, their own insight, their own intuition. That is absolutely what suits our capitalist way of life. And it's not as if we've ever questioned this and said, okay, we have this state, which is really an extreme form of mental ill health. Heteronomy is the death of the individual, the end of our autonomy. We become no more than puppets. Versus a nicely running economy, for the time being anyway, because the whole approach that we have isn't going to pay off for anyone in the long run. It's only a short-term thing. But we have this choice. We've never acknowledged the choice, and we've gone straight for the state of extreme mental ill health, an extreme of heteronomy. That's what we've gone for. And now we're experiencing the consequences of this, which is the type of suffering that inevitably comes, when we are separated from our own autonomy.